A lot of people around the world right now are going through a Kundalini awakening, but don't know it. And the reason is, as powerful and life-changing as a Kundalini awakening or activation can be, it doesn't oftentimes announce itself in an obvious way. But it will start to slowly make itself known in your body. There's actually quite a few very common, sometimes bizarre, and sometimes even unsettling physical side effects that you're going through a Kundalini awakening. And the reason I'm making this video is because I went through a Kundalini awakening about 10, 15 years ago, and I didn't know that was what was happening to me for a while. And some of these very common, standard physical symptoms were causing me a great deal of concern. I went to doctors. I thought I was losing my mind. I thought my health was really poor. Come to find, these are all just temporary side effects of a very game-changing, life-altering, consciousness expanding, beneficial in all ways type of phenomena that a human being can go through. It's an evolution. It's an expansion of your consciousness. It's a path towards wholeness. It's a beautiful, amazing, sacred thing that for the longest time was rare, reserved for the yogis who trained for it for their whole life. Some say many lifetimes. Now we have millions of people from all walks of life going through this exact same process. And if you're here, you might be one of them. And what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to share with you the most common physical side effects of having a Kundalini awakening, hoping that it can give you the same relief that I found once I figured out what was happening to me. So anyways, welcome to my channel, my friends. My name is Victor Oddo, and I'll see you inside. I'm going to go over the most common ones first. Number one, sometimes extreme levels of fatigue for no discernible reason. If you had a hard workout, a rough week at work, if you haven't slept, it's common sense to not be surprised that you're feeling tired the next day. This type of fatigue can come out of nowhere and can be just as intense as if you were to have had a really hard workout, had a really crazy week at work, etc. In fact, I went through a Kundalini awakening in my early 20s, and at that time, I was in really good shape. I was a fitness trainer. I trained a lot. I worked out, harder than most average people because I was kind of like a nut when it came to working out. And when I had my Kundalini awakening, my fatigue resembled overtraining symptoms. Overtraining, without going into a whole thing, is a very rare condition that only like absolute top tier, like almost Olympic level athletes experience, from training the body to such an absolute extreme that there's this like accumulation of fatigue that can last for sometimes several months. I had such fatigue, I was convinced I was overtraining, but I'm not an Olympic athlete. I wasn't working out that hard. It didn't make any sense. And it happened to me so intensely. I went for like a few years where I really had to be extremely careful with how much I worked out. I had to back off probably like 80%, I would say, in terms of my volume, intensity, etc. And come to find, it's like this very common thing, and it has to do with the rewiring of your nervous system. The Kundalini is very activating and very purifying, not just in a spiritual, like abstract way, but on an actual physical, biological level. And I've just been making these videos for about 10 years now and talking a lot about this. And like the most common thing that I hear is people struggling with fatigue, and they're going to doctors. They're not sure what it is. Just to rest assured, at least from my experience, also in working with people, it goes away. And also, it sometimes has a lot to teach you. You may even notice your fatigue does, if you pay attention, it might be a bit more intense around full moon periods. Full moons tend to be kind of activating in general. And to someone like you who's going through a spiritual awakening or a Kundalini awakening, you're going to be more like predisposed, you could say, to the effects of the full moon. So your fatigue might come on around these times of like spiritual activation. And that's like the silver lining right there. It can seem like your body is becoming, of course, like less healthy if you're experiencing this extreme fatigue or even mild fatigue. But really what's happening is your nervous system is being kind of upgraded, activated. And there's a temporary side effect because there's a lot of energy going into this process. Just like if you were healing a wound from surgery, a lot of your body's energy will naturally go towards the area of you that needs assistance, pulling from other areas. So it's easier to catch a cold, for example, when you're healing something. The fatigue is a result of all that energy going into not healing, but more so upgrading, rewiring, refining your nervous system. Number 2 is more anxiety. If you've had a Kundalini awakening, I can almost guarantee that you have found yourself having way more anxiety than you ever remember having. And it might be similar to the fatigue where you're wondering, where is this coming from? Why do I feel so nervous, so anxious for no discernible reason? But what you might find yourself doing, and this is even like a further indicator, not one of the official signs, but more of another indicator, you might find yourself going into a lot of reflection, contemplating the anxiety, pondering the potential source of it, being almost suspicious as if some part of you knows it's not just some random, physical symptom of anxiety. Rather, perhaps anyway, a clue to something deeper within you that hasn't been resolved, that maybe you've been carrying for your whole life, and now all of a sudden you can no longer hide from it. Kundalini awakening, what it does is it starts to purge us physically, emotionally, spiritually, of anything that is not in alignment with our true essence, essentially, which includes trauma, fear, any of those denser, lower emotional energies, unexpressed emotion, unspoken words, any type of tension whatsoever. It starts to come up. But as it's coming up, initially anyways, it manifests as just this like unsettling feeling, this like, this generalized anxiety. It's like a part of your psyche is aware that there's stuff brewing, stuff is coming up. Things are rising from the depths, basically. But again, what is even a clearer sign to me is if even you may oscillate. I know I did. Part of me at times would have kind of like an intuitive, like what seemed like an intuitive understanding of what was happening to me. At least I thought. Like this feeling like there's something more here, something more is going on. But then at times that intuition would not be present, and I would find myself instead kind of in my head, going on WebMD, going down the rabbit hole. So you might find yourself kind of oscillating back and forth because the mind is a powerful tool. And if you allow it to indulge itself in such sort of paranoid, desperate seeking of relief and certainty, you're gonna spiral. But I would suspect if you found a video like this, there are times where you are fairly certain that there is something connected to this anxiety. Maybe this anxiety isn't a problem. Maybe it's you're unthawing. You're waking up. You're becoming aware. You're coming back online. And now you're taking an honest inventory of like, what is going on inside of you? Who are you? What do you identify with? You might find yourself asking these deeper questions provoked by this pesky anxiety, which is doing its job. It's letting you know there's more to the story. Number 3 is sleep disturbances. This is super frustrating. This used to drive me crazy, honestly. I used to go to bed sometimes, and like the moment I'd lay down, I'd just look up and I would just know I'm not going to sleep. And it wasn't because I wasn't tired. It wasn't because I didn't need the sleep. I may have been fatigued and dealing with all sorts of other symptoms, which we'll get into in a minute here, but I was wired. Part of me was stimulated with sometimes creative energy. You feel like activated creatively, but just at the wrong time. It's like, okay, I don't mind this feeling of feeling, inspired and creative and sort of active, but it's not ideal when it comes on at night, which oftentimes it does. What I suspect and what I sort of speculated is that because the Kundalini, it's trying to like work its way through our system, this energy to purify us. Oftentimes, I think we keep it kind of like suppressed maybe a little bit because we're busy, we're in our heads, we're dealing with our ordinary duties of the day. But at night, we're not so contracted. And finally, this snake-like energy can flow through us, and it can be a very activating experience. So when I say sleep disturbance, I mean activating. You're active during the sleep, which can, of course, at a very surface level, keep you awake. It's difficult to sleep. But you also might have other things happening. You might have other experiences during the nighttime. I would, for sure. I would have energy moving throughout my body, just like an electrical type of energy I could literally feel moving through my body. And sometimes it would be accompanied with noise, like a buzz, like a buzzing sound. It was like these pulses or ripples of vibrational energy going through my system, up my spine, down my spine, sometimes just throughout my limbs. I'd feel like zoop, as if I was like being beamed up or something. Very concerning if you don't know what the hell's going on. Why is this happening? Am I about to like have what is all this? It was at the very least, it was distracting, and it certainly didn't help me get any sleep. Quite unsettling to feel this going on. Sometimes when the energy hits you at night, you might also have like closed eye visuals. You might start seeing stuff. If you've ever taken psychedelics, you know what I mean by closed eye visuals. And it makes sense when you've taken a psychedelic, of course, you're expecting it. It's part of the experience. But when you're just laying there, unable to sleep, fatigued for no freaking reason, your body's exhausted, but your mind and your nervous system is wired, and you're vibrating, and you're having closed eye visuals, you can't help but wonder, what the heck is going on here? And here, when this happens, you might also have that intuitive understanding, this intuitive knowing that something probably fairly profound is happening. This is like a mystical, spiritual type of thing. But again, depending on where you are in that moment, the fear can oftentimes kick in and you start spiraling and worrying. You start thinking like, well, nobody else I've ever talked to ever mentioned anything like this. That's not good. The physical symptoms, if you tune into them, it can start to really freak you out. It can become this monstrous thing in your body just because you're afraid and you're attaching fear to it. So you start combining the fear with the paranoid thinking, and it's not too long before you get to the conclusion that I'm going nuts. I'm gonna die. Something bad is happening to me. It reminds me when I used to have heart palpitations, which we'll get into later on as well. I was online like, am I gonna have a heart attack? I'll be looking up like signs you're about to have a heart attack. I went and got an EKG at the freaking urgent care. But also, again, other times, same experiences, deep down, I knew that I was not going to find any certainty or relief online for sure. Definitely not, in the doctor's office. This is something that I knew was happening for a reason. And you might have that too. But it can be tough. I'll tell you what I learned before I move on. What I learned is your body will rest when it needs to. I used to fight not being able to sleep. I would get so frustrated, and I tried everything. I'd go online and I'd look up different things and little hacks for falling asleep. You drink a glass of milk, you don't watch TV, you all the lighted candle for the last hour. I've tried it all. Warm baths, Epsom salt baths. I tried taking medication at times, melatonin. And when I was active like that, nothing worked. And I used to like lay in bed, not just bored for like 8 hours, but frustrated and resistant. And my wife would hear me like making those noises and like, I'd punch my pillow sometimes because it would just get to me. And eventually I realized there was no point in fighting it. And it's something that was going to apparently just happen from time to time. And what I noticed is when I stopped fighting it, I would just get up and I go about, I do something interesting that evening. And I found that the next day wasn't as bad as I anticipated. That I could get through the day much better than I thought with like no sleep. And now we're finally at one of the last really common ones, and that is intense waves of emotion. Similar to the fatigue, these intense waves of emotion won't really make any sense. It won't be appropriate for the circumstance. You could be sitting watching a commercial on TV and all of a sudden just start bawling. Is the commercial really that touching? I highly doubt it, but here you are. You also sometimes might have powerful like waves of fear. Most human beings, it's not surprising, we have a lot of fear. If you just think about how our biology, how we're wired for survival, and some of the almost like unspeakable things that humanity has endured. If there is such a thing as past lives, just imagine that. Imagine you were alive 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, 200 years ago, like some of the crazy stuff you've gone through, you know, and it's like, that's all locked up. It's all in our DNA. It's all in you. And what we are now is based on that, from that, created from all that. And the Kundalini is such a mysterious and powerful thing that it starts to purge you of all of that. So even if you haven't had any like really memorable traumas, for example, and even if your life is relatively fine, it doesn't mean you're not carrying these deep, like existential, primal fears of survival and instinct and the ego's desire to stay intact. And the Kundalini starts going into all of that. And once in a while, it'll rise up in you and you'll feel it. It's like you're afraid for no reason, or you're sad for no reason, or you're angry for no reason. It's okay. This is a good thing. And this is what one of the many reasons I would say I make videos like this, because this is not a bad thing. It's like all of us, imagine if humanity had some way, some means of purging and cleansing itself from the past. And we didn't have to carry around all this fear, all this unnecessary, outdated conditioning, all this trauma. Imagine how much lighter it would be on planet Earth. How much more easily we'd get along. How much more joy we would have. And when this starts happening to ordinary people, instead of thinking, thank God, finally, the cleanse my soul has been long awaiting for countless lifetimes, let me let go and trust and allow it to take place and be grateful for the experience. No, most people, because people aren't really informed that this can happen, they think they compare themselves to other people and they think, now I'm unstable. I should be put on medication. There's something wrong with me. I'm losing my mind. It's not true. In fact, Carl Jung, he had this whole this spiel on what he would call normal people. You're normal people. Right now, if you relate with this, you're comparing yourself to normal people. People on the streets, people going to their corporate jobs, their suit and their tie and their dress, and they look good, and their makeup's done, they got their smartphone, and they're smiling, and there's nothing wrong. They're affluent, they're driving the nice car, nice family. Normal people. Carl Jung said these are the most unstable and unpredictable people, because they don't know what they're carrying. They literally believe themselves to be completely, I'm good. I don't have any trauma. I don't have any existential fear in my nervous system. No, I'm good. These are the ones that are the freaking ticking time bombs, according to Carl Jung, and I tend to agree. The people like you who are having these waves of emotion and fatigue and all this stuff, it's like, yeah, I can see where by some logic that's a problem, but at least you're aware. You're awake. You're at least more aware of the truth of what's really going on, and therefore, within that, you can be a lot more stable. Another thing Carl Jung says is he had a quote, I forgot, I'm going to paraphrase it. Basically, like, unaware parts of your unconscious can do a lot more harm than the parts of you that you're aware of. So even when you're unstable and all this stuff's happening, you're aware it's happening. That's why you're feeling it now. You're unthawing. This is how you can actually begin to release it, to heal it, to transmute it, to let it go, to no longer identify with it. But this is the process in which this all happens. So the most important thing I want to just one of the most important reasons I make videos like this is to help people like you not resist this type of stuff. And to know that you have the option, at the very least, it's just an option that I found to work, to trust what's happening with you. To just let go and allow whatever's there. Good luck resisting all this. Good luck resisting the fatigue, the insomnia, the emotional waves. It's happening. There's nothing you can do about it. But that resistance, it can make your experience dramatically worse. And I've been there. And if you can just sort of like, if something I'm saying in this video is resonating with what you've already been telling yourself and your own inclination to your own intuition, then just try letting go. And you know what can happen? What I found, especially with the waves of emotion, the waves of energy, it can finally move out of you. You can experience profound catharsis, release, healing, insight into who you really are underneath all of that. And the final really common one is just an overall sensitivity to everything. People especially, busy, intense places, big time, but also movies, bright lights, even like being on your phone. Like all of a sudden, you're just really easily affected to by stimulating input. And what used to be normal to you and tolerable and have like no noticeable effect on you, all of a sudden, it's a lot. And this can also be, this can be kind of like, I suppose, related with the anxiety, but anxiety can sometimes just be also partially a result of this hypersensitivity. And you might also wonder, like, is this bad? It can seem bad. It can seem like it makes life more difficult. And in some ways it does. But similar to all the other ones, this sensitivity is more awareness, more information. Now you can not only see what people are doing, hear what they're saying and telling you, you can feel their intentions. You can feel their overall vibe. You can discern pretty easily if they are an energy you want to be around. And it doesn't have to work in all bad. It's not all bad. You're sensitive to both ends of the spectrum. You might hear a song you've heard, over and over many times, and now you feel it. You realize the sheer brilliance of that song. It's a richer experience sometimes. Music, nature, people who are meant to be around you. Even certain books will have a resonance to it. It's this awareness of both, the compatible frequencies out there all over and the incompatible ones. And from this sort of, initially it's kind of overwhelming and it can produce anxiety, but now you can start to organize your entire life based upon this new source of this new ability to perceive what is good for you and what is not good for you, what is bringing you down. You'll start to wake up to all of this, and then it is up to you to make the adjustments. That's a whole other video. I'm not going to get into that. But you'll naturally do it because human beings naturally gravitate towards what feels good, safe, wholesome, and we naturally gravitate away which feels bad. So it's something you'll find yourself doing without needing me to tell you. Now I'll get into some more unusual side effects, physical side effects that happen to some people, but not all. One of them is ringing in your ears. This is something, there's whole YouTube videos about this, ringing in your ears. Why do I have tinnitus? Did I go to the concert and should I have worn earplugs? Like, what's going on? It's just a ringing in your ears. There's different theories. I can tell you what people will tell you. They'll tell you it's because you're raising your vibration, or you're perceiving higher frequencies, or it's just, I don't know what it is. But to me, I've come to associate it with, yes, like a vibrational Kundalini-esque type of upgrade. And I usually, I like it honestly when it happens because it feels like I'm being upgraded, quite honestly. And that's about all I can say about that. But for what it's worth, this is not happening to everybody, but there's a lot of reports out there of people who are going through a Kundalini awakening who have the ringing in the ears and they haven't had it before. Another thing you might have is like pressure. You might see people describe it as headaches, like around like the crown or the third eye area. But to me, it was more of like a pressure, like a chakra. We're said to have 7 chakras going through the body. And the Kundalini is said to have a goal to rise up the spine, opening and purifying each of the chakra centers, allowing us to become more unified with the divine, essentially. That's like the ultimate goal of it. And what I found is that a lot of that energy can kind of get stuck up in your head. Like there's energy trying to flow up and through your chakras, but then because your chakras still need some work, it's like there's no outlet. Like my chimney out there, I think I have to get it cleaned because the smoke is coming out. It's clogged. You might, similar analogy for your chakras. So this energy is kind of pooling in your forehead and head. That's what happened to me all the time. And I made the mistake of trying to release it with like visualization and different things. What I found is that just made it worse. The more I focused on it, the more energy would kind of get drawn up into it. And it wasn't long before I realized my best bet was to kind of ignore it, accept it. A lot of times my focusing on it is what made it a problem. And the more I can just sort of be okay with it, it would eventually go away. It can be distracting though, I will say. Like, it's been a while. Luckily, this does go away. But when I was going through it, I wasn't able to always not focus on it. And it would sometimes create, I wouldn't say a headache, but I would get brain fog. I would have a very difficult time finding the right words. Like I was a personal trainer when I was going through this, and I would really struggle in just basic conversation for a little while there. There were days when I was like normal and other days where I felt like my brain was working at like 20%. Like I just couldn't like think well. That's the best way I could put it. But nonetheless, it goes away. It has a purpose and it's not going to hurt you. Another one is feeling actual heat and vibrations making its way up your spine in either a subtle or sometimes it can be a very intense way, a very undeniable way. And what can sometimes happen though is people have that experience once and then their Kundalini is kind of active and then it doesn't happen again, but all the other stuff does. Or it can be like what happened for me. It happened once very intensely and then it started happening again and again and again and again and again for a little while there. I would have these periods where I would feel it coming on. I would just be sitting there and I would have this like, almost like this sick, like this eerie feeling, almost like how it would feel if you like all of a sudden get this like thought that maybe there's someone in the room with me. Like that, it would be like that. And then, and it was like, I was picking up on something, this energy about to blast up my spine. But that doesn't happen to everybody. It doesn't matter. If anything, honestly, like I would think that it either meant that I kind of bit off more than I can chew, like I had too much Kundalini going on that was actually good for me, or maybe I had a lot of blockages. Because what I eventually learned is the more like purging I've done, the less symptoms I have, as if that energy can finally flow. If there's no resistance, you don't really hear it. You don't really feel it. There's no symptom. It's just normal. And that's why I believe the symptoms eventually settle down, is because it kind of does its job. It doesn't go away. It clears the path. In the beginning, for me, I think I opened it up too aggressively. It happened to me on a psychedelic mushroom trip, unexpectedly, but it was a very forceful opening. And I don't think I was really purified for this. You know, people who study Kundalini in the East, they would prepare their bodies with very intense, there's all sorts of like really intense things people would do. For example, one thing I read about was where you would swallow like a cloth, like a damp cloth, you'd swallow it and then you you pull it up uh, out of your stomach through your throat, and you do that a bunch of times to clear out phlegm. And fasting, there's all these different things people do just to prepare for this Kundalini, and I believe it's because it'll help you have a smoother experience. Well, the problem with us regular old people who weren't even planning for this, it just happens, and if you weren't prepared, well, you're not prepared, and you're going to have maybe some more symptoms. I don't know, honestly, but all I can tell you is that the energy and the heat is something I went through, and if you look it up, it's something a lot of other people go through as well, associated with Kundalini. Another one is heart palpitations. Now, with that said, use your own judgment here. There are a lot of reasons for heart palpitations. I had them one time recently, actually, because of mold. But I did get this also when I was going through my Kundalini awakening. And I will say, at least for me, when I was going through the Kundalini activation for about a 3-year period or so, when I would have the heart palpitations, it almost kind of felt nice. It would be like more like a flutter, and sometimes energy. It felt like energy was able to flow more easily, and it felt like a little blockage was like released. Now, I can imagine by that time I was aware of what I was going through, and I was not resisting it. So maybe you need to hear that, so because maybe you're doing what I was doing when I had the heart palpitations from the mold. I didn't know it was from the mold. I thought I had heart issues and stuff. In fact, I called my mom up and I was like, do we have a history of heart problems in the family? And she's like, yeah, actually we do. Your grandfather had a open heart surgery, and I went down this whole fearful rabbit hole. But again, it was due to the mold. But nonetheless, I know how concerned I was. And maybe you're having the same effect and yours is just Kundalini. I don't know for sure. All I can tell you with certainty is that a lot of people will have this, and they will associate it with the Kundalini, but also usually in a positive light. It's an activation, most will say. And I agree as well. If you enjoyed this video and you would like to learn more about how a Kundalini awakening or a spiritual awakening, I oftentimes use them sort of interchangeably, can affect your actual life. Today was all about the body, a little bit about the emotions, but as you probably know, if you relate with this and you're still watching, you know that it's not just your body that experiences these disruptions, these symptoms. It also can happen in your life, in your career, in your relationships. And in the video, in one of these corners here, I go much deeper into how an awakening can affect your life. And if you got some relief out of this, this might have the same effect, which I hope it does. So regardless, you have an amazing day, my friend. Thank you for watching. Peace.